Today on Locked On Canadiens, Montreal Canadiens are making a coaching change. No, it's not Marty like all of you keep asking for.
You are Locked On Canadiens, your daily podcast on the Montreal Canadiens. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and welcome into another episode of Locked On Canadiens. Thank you for making us your first listen of the day, for subscribing wherever you get your podcast, doing that supports us here on the show, and ensures you don't miss an episode, and for making us here at Locked On, the #1 sports podcast network. We do really love saying that. Thank you so much for tuning in, and we've got news to talk about today. It seems like the Canadiens love to do this on an off day, and I feel like that's for us specifically. My name is Ian Boisvert, also known as at Maybe It's Ian. I'm joined, as I always am, by Laura Saba, also known as the Actor Stick. Laura, how are we feeling on this really, honestly, odd piece of news to come into on a Wednesday morning, now bleeding into Thursday?
I think for me, it's a why now, right? And I know we're going to talk a little bit more about that in the second segment. I think it's interesting. It certainly raised some eyebrows. I feel like in this market, it got a lot of attention because people have been calling for the goalie coach to be replaced for a while now. This is not new. It's no secret that both goaltenders are struggling. I just think that for me, what I'm sensing is that this isn't really going to move any mountains, right? This isn't going to change the game. I think that in the middle of a season, it's going to be really hard to adjust a goaltender's game. It's not like, you do some drills with Cole Caulfield and find out why the puck's not going in the net or, whatever. So I think that's very, the timing of this is quite interesting. I do feel that their hand was maybe forced a little bit because of just, you look at the way that the division is going, which we're going to do in our third segment. I'm just doing the rundown.
Yeah.
You look at the way the division's going, and the Montreal Canadiens cannot afford any more losses due to goaltending because they have way too many. I did a little bit of math, and I will need you to confirm this, but I believe that if the Montreal Canadiens had better goaltending in, I think, 8 games than they had, then they would either be challenging Carolina for the conference or they would be leading the conference.
Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me because, yes, the Canadiens defensively aren't all that strong, but they're about middle of the pack, maybe a little bit below that. The goaltending has not even matched that level. If the goaltending matched the somewhat average or slightly below average of the the defense, I sort of would understand that argument.
Yeah.
Let's jump right into it then, right? So on Wednesday, the Canadiens announced that goaltending coach Eric Raymond has been relieved of his duties as the goaltending coach. They bring up Marco Marciano, who is Laval's goaltending coach, on an interim basis. However, in listening to Jeff Gorton speak, it's clear to me that this is an interim basis in the same way that Marty was when Marty was brought in, right? I don't know why they're doing that. I think just to give themselves some flexibility. But the way that Jeff Gorton spoke about this was more so he tried to, and this is a great thing for an employer to do, right? He tried to frame this as less of Eric Raymond is not doing his job and more so of Marco Marciano is being called on by some of the other teams in this league. There's interest, and we're kind of blocking him from getting to that point. Raymond's contract is up at the end of this year. We are fast tracking this.
Yeah.
And I appreciate it a lot from that perspective because it's forward thinking, right? We don't want to get stuck without a goaltending coach next year, especially considering the shape that our goaltending is in right now.
And the fact that other teams are interested. That's part
right.
of it too, is you want to keep other teams from getting that advantage if this guy is the next thing in goalie coaching.
Yeah. And look, Marco Marciano's been with the Canadiens or our organization for a long time. He has spanned 3 of the Canadiens AHL affiliates. He joined the Hamilton Bulldogs as a video coach back in 2013. He was with the St. John's Ice Caps, and he's been with the Laval Rockets since they had been in Laval. He comes up and he is the goaltending coach for Montreal. Let's talk realistic expectations for what this move can do, because I want to point out, everyone going, oh, finally they get rid of Eric Raymond. The best seasons of Sam Montembeault's career have been under Eric Raymond. So I don't know necessarily that this is a, X plus Y equals this. Like it's not a direct sort of formula here that the Canadians are going to immediately find results. I do think it's interesting that, when Montembeault was down in Laval and working with Marciano, and then he came back up, those first few games after he came back up were his best ones. And since then it's kind of struggled. What are your realistic what are your expectations for this? I don't want to immediately tell you they're realistic without hearing what they are. What are your expectations for what this move will do?
I think like there's one thing that I want to point out. There's one thing that we haven't talked about yet. Is that Samuel Montembeault, after that Boston game, there was a practice or something where he said the goals that he allowed, there was nothing he could have done anything on, which is a flat out lie, and he knows it, right? I
Yeah.
wonder if hearing that made the Canadians start the wheels start turning in their head. Okay. So I think that you can't fundamentally change the way a goalie plays in the middle of the season. They do have some time off. I don't know. I honestly don't know the mechanics of like whether they're allowed to practice, whether the Canadians are allowed to like make them practice or anything like that, because a break is a break. I don't know what like the CBA has mandated
That, by the
because what?
I have that courtesy of whether or not she knows it, friend of this show, Priyanta Emerth, who posted about the firing.
Okay,
And
let me know.
I sort of posted on Blue Sky like the timing of this is curious because it means he's going to get to work with these guys a little bit, and then they're going to go on this break, and I don't know if they're allowed to practice. Priyanta actually replied to me and said that teams can resume practices during the Olympic break beginning February 17th.
Okay.
So there's a big chunk of time between that February 17th. I think it's about a week or so before their first game back.
Yeah.
So he's going to get time to work with both of these goalies, assuming Dobeš doesn't make the Czechia team as an injury replacement. Like he's going to get time to work with those guys. So I found the timing of this to be fascinating. He's going to get some time between now and when the Olympic break kicks off. They're going to have a little bit of time off to digest it, to rest and recuperate, and then come back and for the stretch run, have this guy in their ear giving them direction. So the timing of this I find fascinating, also for the same reason that you mentioned, that those comments from Montembeault after that game or practice or whatever it was, he was basically saying, other than the Minton goal, there's nothing I could have done. Which is just like, I was listening to the Bastien Gadent notebook, their emergency podcast that came out, and the point that they made was the point that Arpon Basu made was that like that's not how goalies talk, man.
No.
Goalies think they have a shot at every puck that comes at them. Yeah. So it's like it's rather almost defeatist for Montembeault to just be like, what can you do?
Exactly.
Like, I find that language that he used to be concerning.
Mm-hmm.
Almost for that reason, I think you give Dobeš the stretch run between now and the Olympic break.
Which I also completely understand. Okay, so realistically, I don't know how much that changes other than maybe getting them to settle down and have like a little bit more confidence. Maybe the way that they're practicing or maybe the discipline with which they're approaching it. Maybe they just need a new voice in their ear, like you said, right? So I did reach out to our good friend Dylan Waugh, goalie coach, and he said that Montreal, from what I've seen this year, has the least aggressive goalies in the league. My guess is that we're going to see them move about a foot forward and maybe get more aggressive on sharper angles. Just to guess, as those are where I would start. That said, those are not necessarily changes I would want to make in season because they're fairly fundamental to your play. But my guess is that we see a performance uptick with no real technical change just because there's a new voice. So, a long way to say that the changes won't be immediate or obvious, but he said it's going to be really funny to watch people try and analyze their technical changes from just one or two games. But I know we're running out of time in this segment. Like personally for me, I think there's something that Dylan also pointed out is that all three of these goalies play extremely different styles from each other, right? Jacob Fowler is very different. Jacob Fowler is more kind of, to me, he matches the athleticism and speed of Carey Price. Samuel Montembeault is very different, and Jakub Dobeš is just chaos, but sometimes it's good chaos, right? So I wonder if the fact that Marco Marciano, who my friend and I keep calling Marcel Marceau because we just can't get his name stuck in our head. So for forever and ever, he's going to be Marcel Marceau of the Montreal goaltending, whatever, the Montreal coaching staff. Is that maybe because he's been in the organization a long time and he's seen a lot of goaltenders, is that maybe he just has a fresher take on how to coach different goalies differently?
Yeah, I'm interested to see how this plays out. There's a lot about goaltending that we don't know, that Marty doesn't know. Marty
It's voodoo.
admittedly says, "I know nothing about the position." So, I that's why I've always kind of scoffed at the idea they need to fire this goalie coach. Well, like, we don't know what this is going to do. With that said, let's talk about, when we come back, whether or not we think this is a panic move by the Montreal Canadiens, or whether maybe it is a panic move and it's entirely justified to panic right now. And we'll get into that in just a minute here on Locked On Canadiens. If you've ever hired someone who looked good on paper but wasn't the right fit, you know how important that is. When you want candidates who truly match what you're looking for, trust Indeed sponsored jobs. Hiring, Indeed is all you need. Stop struggling to get your job post seen on other sites. Indeed sponsored jobs put your post at the top of the page and help you reach the right candidates faster. If I needed to hire someone for this show, I hope I don't have to, but I'd go straight to Indeed and be very specific about what I need. Real experience, not just a resume buzzword. Sponsored jobs boost your post to the people who are the best match for your role, and that makes a real difference. According to Indeed data, sponsored jobs posted directly on Indeed are 90% more likely to report a hire than non-sponsored jobs. Spend more time interviewing candidates who check all the boxes with less stress, less time, and more results using Indeed's sponsored jobs. Listeners of this show get a $75 sponsored job credit to help give your job the premium placement it deserves at Indeed.com/lockedon. Just go to Indeed.com/lockedon right now and support this show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring? Do it the right way with Indeed. All right, we are back. Thank you for making Locked On Canadiens your first listen of the day, and thank you for making Locked On the #1 sports podcast network. If you haven't already, go check out our Everydayer Club. You'll get access to an ad-free audio feed for Locked On Canadiens, compatible with Apple Podcasts, Spotify, basically every major podcast app that you're listening to this show on. And you'll also get an invite to the members-only Locked On Everydayer Discord server, which includes a group chat that's just for listeners of this show and these two on the show, me and Laura. We'll be on there from time to time. Come hang out with us. So go to lockedoncanadiens.supercast.com or check the link in the show notes to learn more. All right. I think my immediate thought from this swap, right, was that, one, this was really the last of the Bergevin holdovers in the coaching staff. And I believe it's also the first firing since Dom Ducharme was fired. So I find that in and of itself is significant, that the Canadiens would make that decision in a season that's going well, right? Like, in the grand scheme of things, they're in a playoff spot. They're the youngest team in the league, trademarks, Locked On Canadiens. And it's, yes, the goaltending has struggled, but it still felt odd that they would, without the context that Jeff Gorton provided later, his contract is up. Marco was getting calls from around the league. We wanted to bring that voice into the locker room now.
Can't lose Marco.
You can't. We ask if it was a panic trade. I almost wonder a panic move. I almost wonder if it is a panic move, but not for the reasons that we think. Not for the reasons that, like, the goaltending's bad, let's panic and make a move here. But in the, we're going to lose this goaltending coach at the end of the year. We might lose another one in Marco. We might as well make the move now. It's not so much a panic in the sense that, we have to, everything's going terribly, we have to make this move. But it's almost like there's some urgency involved in that decision from what Jeff Gorton told us in the 4 or 5 minutes that he spoke to the media after the move was announced. What are your thoughts on the urgency with this move and whether or not they panicked before they made this choice?
I think it's their way of saying that the season is not lost. Like, and I know we're saying this when the Canadiens are in a playoff spot. I get it. I get all of that, right? But they're sliding. They have been slipping and sliding, and everyone else is catching up. And I think this is kind of a signal saying, like, we still care. Yes, the process is important. Yes, we are still rebuilding. We could have easily have done this in the summer, but we still care. Like, we still want that fire this season. So I don't necessarily think it was a panic move unless there was an offer on the table for that, a serious offer, not like a can we talk to him, but a we're going to offer him a crap load of money. Please
Right.
let us talk to him kind of thing. Right.
Yeah.
And I think that you can't separate this discussion from the fact that the goaltenders have struggled a lot this season. Now, Jacob Dobeš looked spectacular in the last game. And Samuel Montembeault has looked spectacular in like 4 or 5 games this season. But overall, their body of work is not encouraging because every time we look at these guys, they look terrified of their jobs, right? And that's something that Dylan brought up as well, right? Like they seem like scared goalies. So I don't think you can separate this decision from the fact that the goaltending needs to be better. But at the same time, the Canadians are not idiots. They know that this isn't going to fundamentally fix these problems. I think that
Right.
they just think that a little bit of improvement is going to go a long way.
Sure. I also think, to that point, I think you're totally right that they've both looked like deer in the headlights for most of the season. Jakob Dobeš on Tuesday against Vegas could not have looked further from that. He was out at the top of his paint making saves. He was confident. He robbed, a couple backdoor plays on the power play. We say all this because the Canadians have also said that he's going to get the start against Colorado on Thursday. I love this choice. I'm going to be honest. I flat out, I love that they saw what I think I saw in Dobeš on Tuesday, which is this dude might be feeling it a little bit right now, and you kind of have to let him do that, even if it's against the best team in the National Hockey League. I'm curious how that ends up playing out. We'll be back on Friday to discuss that game, of course. What I also found interesting was, in this conversation that Gorton had with the media, he was asked about what this, the Fowler question. Will Fowler play more this season? What does this do for the decision to call Fowler up? Whatever, something along those lines. And essentially he said that it's a group decision with him and Jeff, or him and Kent Hughes, and Marty is involved in that as well. And they have these discussions regularly. I almost wonder if this move is, again, not a panic move, but a move in the sense that it maybe buys them a little bit more time to leave Fowler in the American Hockey League, right? They don't have to. They tried that move, right? They called up Fowler. He gave him some quality games, some quality efforts to get some points. Now they don't have to go back to him right away. In fact, they're kind of inclined not to.
Well, he's not done cooking, right? Like that's the thing.
Right.
Like he's got to stay in the oven for a little bit. So I really do think that this gives them a little bit more lift. Like we talk about it, like we both have email jobs. Our bosses say things like, I will give you some lift when they want to help
Yeah.
us, right? That's the Canadians giving some lift to our goaltenders, right? But that also, like, I just think that the Canadians are realistic about Jacob Fowler too, is that he is an incredible talent with a lot of potential, but he is not remotely fully cooked. And the longer they can get away with keeping him in Laval, the better he's going to be in the future. And I don't like the idea of artificially holding defensemen back and goalies back, even though they tend to have a longer curve. I do think that sometimes some teams do hold back, like especially in those positions, they do hold people artificially back for a long time. I don't think that that's what's happening. I just think that they want to be realistic. And I think that I used to subscribe to the thing, like if you call him up too soon, you're going to ruin him. I don't believe in that with Jacob Fowler. I
Mhm.
just think that he needs a lot more growing, like just even physically. And I think that the Canadians are just kind of like, we're not going to rush this because there's a possibility that the Canadians can make the playoffs and there's a possibility that they can win a round and they want to focus on that aspect first.
Yeah, I think those are all great points. I also think it's important for the Canadians that when they call up important prospects, that they have a positive experience, right? That they have an experience. Like I look back to last year with Logan Mayu, and when he was called up, it was miserable. He was not playing well. The team was not playing well, and it was really just a bad environment for him to be in. Fowler, for all intents and purposes, like this could have been a bad call up for him, right? The goaltending was floundering. He was called up after, essentially in the middle of a game in which the Canadiens were getting blown out, along with Owen Beck and Adam Engstrom. The Canadiens were like, we're trying some stuff. That ultimately led to them, playing Fowler. He stayed for, I believe, 6 games. He went 4-4-2. He leaves with a 902 save percentage. Like he finds himself in a good spot leaving the Canadiens, where I think that's really important to them. And they don't want to call him up again if they don't think the experience for him in Montreal will be helpful. Yes, helpful to the Canadiens as well. We've talked about a lot this week. The confluence between process and result. It needs to be, both of those things need to be met. But I think first and foremost, it's most important that he comes up and has a positive experience before going back down to work on his development a little bit more. All right, let's leave that there. When we come back, we're looking at the rest of the division. Laura said Montreal is sliding and all the other teams are catching up. Let's take a look at some of those teams and figure out what's going on at the Atlantic. We'll do that in just a minute here on Locked On Canadiens. Let's be real. Managing your finances can feel overwhelming. Between subscriptions you forgot about, bills that keep going up, and trying to figure out where all your money actually goes each month, it's easy to feel like you're losing control. And who has time to track every transaction or hunt down hidden fees? That's where Rocket Money comes in, the personal finance app that helps you take control. It finds and cancels your unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, and helps lower your bills so you can grow your savings. I was shocked. Rocket Money found a bunch of subscriptions that were eating up its Patreons. It's some streaming app that I hadn't watched in months. I completely forgot about them. It saved me money. I love how it tracks all the subscriptions and lets me cancel them right in the app with just a few taps. I don't have to hunt down customer service numbers and get in email chains. It does all that for me. The automatic transaction categorization is a game changer. I can finally see exactly where my money is going each month, and you can set budgets, goals, get personalized insights, and receive real-time alerts for large transactions, upcoming bills, and low balances. It even consolidates your checking, savings, loans, and investments into a single dashboard so you get a clearer view of your entire financial picture. So let Rocket Money help you reach your financial goals faster. Join rocketmoney.com/lockedon. That's rocketmoney.com/lockedon. rocketmoney.com/lockedon. All right. Welcome back. Let's take a look at the Atlantic, huh? I will say, we talk about the Canadiens sliding and other teams catching up. I want to provide a little perspective on this, right? The Canadiens are currently in wild card 1. They're tied with the Bruins, but the Bruins have played an extra game, so the Canadiens maintain that spot for now. Buffalo is also tied with the Canadiens. They are in the third divisional spot, but they are only there because they have played one fewer game. Then you have Tampa at the top with 70 points, and Detroit right below them with 69 nice points. That's for Scott. Every time that happens, I have to do that for my buddy Scott. Detroit has played 54 games, though, so among the more in the league. Montreal's 4 points back at Detroit as we record this, with a game in hand. So it could be 2 points. So I want to say all that because everyone made it seem like the fall from second in the division to the first wild card was like falling off of a cliff. And it's just not.
I think that's the problem, though. It's too tight for anyone's
comfort. It is too tight. But I also want to put some fears aside as well. The next closest team outside of the playoff picture to the Canadiens is the Florida Panthers, who are 6 points back with a game at hand. So yes, the Panthers are going to make their move. I don't think that this Florida Panthers team is missing the playoffs. As injured as they have been, they're going to get healthy. I believe Barkov has started skating, so time to be very afraid about that. But then you've got 2 points behind Florida. You have Philly, who somehow has only played 51 games. That's the fewest in the conference with Columbus. Toronto's tied with them at 57. So is Washington. Washington's at 57 points. There are 8 points back of a playoff spot. New Jersey, a point behind them, so 9 points out. Columbus, Ottawa, and the New York Rangers are toast. They're not going anywhere.
Well, then who's in the playoff spots in the Metro? It's Carolina, Pittsburgh, and who am I forgetting?
The New York Islanders,
That's
which
terrible.
I just
I'm so sorry,
I
Gil.
no, I mean Gil's probably living life right now. This is great for them. Like I think that, you know, this is why I mentioned a couple episodes ago, like the Canadiens potentially finishing in the first wild card and having to play Carolina
Is better than
it might be better than going through the Atlantic,
yeah.
because the Atlantic is a gauntlet. In the Metro, you know, second place is Pittsburgh in the Metro with 61 points. The thing, like the Canadiens would be in second place in the Metropolitan Division.
Yes.
Instead, they're not even in third in their own division. You know, so I feel that it's important. Let's go through some of these divisional teams here. Tampa's at the top, 50 or 70 points in 51 games. I hate them. I hate
They will
that
never go away.
I know they're roaches. They just will not die. I thought it was over. It's not over. I don't think that's going to be over until, you know, the three-headed monster there is gone, until Kucherov, Vasilevsky, and Hedman, or some combination of them
Is gone.
Leaves.
Yeah.
Which I just don't see happening, because it would be too nice if that happened. The Detroit Red Wings find themselves in second, 69 nice points for the Red Wings. What are your thoughts on them? I find that a lot of the games I watch, they don't really look all that impressive, but they still seem to be winning a lot of hockey games.
I think they're playing a lot of teams that are bad. Or like they're doing what they did to the Montreal Canadiens, which is the Montreal Canadiens allowed them like 5 minutes of control and they just took over the entire game. Detroit has been very good at capitalizing on mistakes. Detroit is not a bad team, I don't think. I've watched quite a few of their games because I do like some of their players. I cannot believe they gave Ben Sherratt an extension at his age at that money and that term. But that's, you know, that's Stevie Y's problem, not mine. I think Detroit is a team that is able to, they've been healthy, which is really key. And they've been really smart about capitalizing on other teams' mistakes. And I think that's something where the Montreal Canadiens maybe used to do back when they were a worse team. And now they're more kind of the team that plays better. And they're the team that you kind of need to counter against.
Yeah. Buffalo in the third spot. I've said it a bunch just this week, the last few weeks. Buffalo is either going to normalize and be a wild card team or third in the division, but less impressive than they are currently, or they're going to win the cup. That's the vibe I get from this roster. Like, I just don't see it happening any third way. It's one of those two things.
Yes.
One thing I do want to point out, it's a website that I think Canadiens fans have all but left behind, Tankathon. And not because we should be pulling up the draft lottery simulator at this point, but because they also show the remaining schedule strength for each team in the National Hockey League. As of right now, the hardest remaining schedule in the National Hockey League belongs to the Detroit Red Wings.
Oh, wow.
Montreal is 6th. Boston is 5th. Buffalo is 7th. So
it's not easy for anyone.
No, in the top the top 7, only 2 teams are not in the Atlantic. Actually, the top 7, only 2 teams are not in the Atlantic: Calgary and Pittsburgh. The rest of them are all Atlantic Division teams. And by the end of this week, Montreal has 2 of their toughest remaining opponents gone. They play Colorado once, and they're done. And then they play Buffalo once on Saturday, and then they're done with Buffalo. Buffalo, on the other hand, has to play Tampa 4 more times.
Oh, wow.
Like, there are some tough games ahead. I want to pull this up next week once the Canadiens are through this tough part of their schedule, and maybe some of these other teams have beaten some lower ranked teams, because I think coming out of the Olympic break, this is going to be very important in seeing, more so than just games remaining, who they have to play.
Yeah.
Because like Detroit, 2 against Colorado, 2 against Tampa, 1 against Carolina, 1 against Dallas, 1 against Minnesota, 1 against Buffalo. Like, those are tough games for them that are left. So I also want to use this as a point, just to dance on the grave of franchise. The Toronto Maple Leafs are toast, and I really enjoy seeing how toast they are. My only hope is that they don't do anything the right way. They trade Nylander for nothing, and they just don't recognize that maybe they shouldn't have hitched their wagon to this somewhat unremarkable coach, who is now only remarkable because he has a cut in his head that looks like someone tried to turn him into a football with the stitches that he has in the roof of it, and the top of his head. It's fun dogging on that team, isn't it?
I never miss an opportunity to do that with the Toronto Maple Leafs. For those of you who were around during the Stanley Cup run for the Montreal Canadiens, like they bullied myself and my former co-host like mercilessly. Obviously the Canadiens won that series and we had the last laugh, but it was really inappropriate the way that they would go after me in particular. So anytime I get an opportunity to laugh at the Maple Leafs, I will. I honestly like other than Nylander, who would you like? Would you pick at that carcass at all?
Oh, I mean, yeah, you mentioned Nylander. I'd have him on this team in a
Yeah,
heartbeat.
yeah. He would be so good on this team.
He'd be
He would be
so good on
so
this.
good on this team. The
You
Toronto
know who I
Maple
would
Leafs are.
like actually? Oliver Ekman-Larsson, I think would be cool.
Yeah,
I think that would be a cool move for the Canadiens.
the Leafs are not trading with the Montreal Canadiens,
No,
but
I don't know. The Islanders just traded with the Rangers and the Devils in the same week. Maybe they will. I don't know. Maybe it's Thomas Plekanec all over again.
maybe it's a hell freeze over. But you know what? Like, why not both?
Why
Got
not?
it.
Yeah. I would be genuinely shocked. But it is nice to see that team is finally deciding that they don't want to be competitive anymore, and they do it in a year where they don't have their own first round pick. The only problem is that the Boston Bruins have that first round pick. So way
We
to
don't want
go!
that.
You stop trading future firsts to the Boston Bruins. Have you learned nothing, you dorks? Have you learned nothing? They've learned nothing. Anyway, I cannot believe that franchise fell for the same thing twice
More
in
than
a
once.
lifetime.
More
Yeah.
than once.
Anyway, looks good on you. All right, let's leave that there. Let's do our trivia and head
Yes.
out of here. Yesterday's question. This was Jake Evans' first game-winning goal of the season. Last year, he had 5. Remember how hot Jake Evans was for a time? It was it was incredible.
What a great season for him. And then it ended with him having twins. Like,
yeah, Jake Evans was on an absolute bender last year, and it was incredible to watch. And he was rewarded with a very modest contract extension, which I find so funny. Anyway, 2 of those 5 were against the same team. Which team did Jake Evans sink twice last season? Laura, who is it?
death, taxes, and the Tampa Bay Lightning.
It is the Tampa Bay Lightning. Jake Evans beat them twice. He scored the game winner on December 29th, 2024. And then again on January 21st, 2025. Twice within a calendar month, he sank that team. That was probably right when we were watching Jake Evans be just unbelievable. There was a stretch where he scored like 4 games in a row. And we were like, who is this guy?
Whenever I think about that Jake Evans performance, I think of like, and you know, in Wolf of Wall Street when he goes, "I'm not leaving." Like,
I'm not leaving. Yeah, yeah, for sure. Oh, I bet that locker room loves that scene. Anyway, Kyle Roberts and Spencer Jameson have the answer correct on that one. Thank you for playing. Today's question: in honor of Montreal playing Colorado on Thursday, and because Patrice Brisebois was in the building for the Canadiens' overtime win over the Vegas Golden Knights, Patrice Brisebois' last NHL goal came on February 21st, 2009, in a 5-3 win over the Ottawa Senators. It was the Habs' 3rd power play goal of the game. Who had the other 2 power play goals in that game? There's one where you're going to go, oh yeah, and there's one where you're going to go, oh yeah? Like, it's a very odd score. Also, look at the penalty minutes from that game if you want to. It was a wild one. If you have the answer, put it in the comments down below this video. Let us know any way you know how, and we'll give you a shout out on the next episode of the show. And that is going to do it for us today on this episode of Locked On Canadiens. Thank you for tuning in, making us your first listen of the day, and for subscribing wherever you get your podcast. Doing that supports us here on the show and ensures you don't miss an episode. Hey, if you're on YouTube, by the way, go ahead and hit the bell, turn the notifications on. You'll get a notification every time we post something, which we are your team every day. So you'll get 5 of those bells in any given week. So go ahead and do that and make sure you're tuning in with us. If you never miss an episode, the Everydayer Club is built for you. Get Locked On Canadiens ad-free, plus members-only Discord access and more. Head to lockedoncanadiens.supercast.com to join the club. For those of you on video, we send you to the first ever 24/7 national Locked On Podcast Network YouTube channel. On audio, make sure your second listen is NHL Game Night on Locked On NHL. You can find us posting things everywhere we post things at Locked On Canadiens. Blue Sky, Instagram, and TikTok primarily. LockedOnCanadiens@gmail.com is the best way to get in contact with us. We do a mailbag every Friday, so send in your mailbag questions. We'll be doing them tomorrow after the Colorado game. So send in those mailbag questions, listen to the Friday episode, and we will do our best to answer all of them that we can. get to in a half-hour show. You can find me at Maybe It's Ian. You can find Laura at The Active Stick. Thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you guys after the Colorado game.